In the heart of Philadelphia, the foundation of a house that was once nearly forgotten remains, rather unobtrusively, beneath the surface, surrounded by an open-air interpretive exhibit that details the extensive history of a once elaborate home on the corner of 6th and Market Street. The house, inhabited by Presidents George Washington and John Adams, is now little more than a pile of rubble. The significance of all those who passed through its walls, however, is anything but diminished. Not far from the Liberty Bell and nearly in the shadow of Independence Hall itself, the house traded hands time and time again during the American Revolutionary War. At its conclusion, the house would burn, rebuilt through funds provided by the financier of the Revolution, Robert Morris. Over time, the house would rise again, brick by brick, not unlike the new country, still finding its footing, before eventually disappearing almost entirely. Today, visitors to Philadelphia can observe the bits that remain, which leave important traces to what the formative years of the United States looked like and continue to teach important lessons about what freedom really meant at the end of the war. I'm Jason Epperson, and this week on Parkography, the President's House at Independence National Historical Park. More in a moment, but first, thanks to this week's sponsor, Slinky Stove. It's the only patented collapsible fire pit that stays intact when packed. Lightweight with a compact design, it's perfect for RVers and car campers, and it sets up in seconds. With Slinky Stove, you get smokeless airflow rings and a clean burning fire. No more dancing around campfire smoke. Inexpensive and packed with extras, the Slinky Stove offers a 3-level cooking system that gives you flexibility, whether it's morning coffee or evening campfire chili. And with contained ash, cleanup's quick and easy, just the way it should be on public lands. Order yours now at slinkystove.com. The foundation for the home that would eventually house the first president of the United States was laid in the late 1760s. Not long before the start of the American Revolutionary War. The home was built by Mary Lawrence Masters, the widow of William Masters, one of the wealthiest people in the colony of Pennsylvania. Likely the largest mansion in Philadelphia at the time, it would house Masters and her 2 daughters for a period of 3 years beginning in 1769, after which the home was gifted to her eldest daughter, Polly, as a wedding present. Along with her new husband, the current governor of the colony, Richard Penn, Polly would reside in the house for 3 additional years before departing for England. When Penn was tasked with presenting the Olive Branch Petition, a series of grievances listed by the colonies to King George III, the couple traveled to London in 1775, where they would remain for the duration of the war ahead. Their absence would leave the house empty, but by September of 1777, Philadelphia was under siege. After the outbreak of the war and the following failure on the part of the Continental Army at nearby Brandywine Creek, the British took possession of the city. As patriots fled and shortages quickly led to suffering, British General Sir William Howe made the former Masters Penn residence his new winter home. Meanwhile, outside the city, a weary army led by General George Washington would retreat to Valley Forge. And over the course of the next 9 months, the British would live in leisure while their opponents froze in the countryside. Howe would resign in April of 1778 and return to London, leaving Philadelphia under the command of General Henry Clinton, who was quickly ordered to abandon the city and retreat to New York by the end of June. Shortly after their departure, Colonial Major General Benedict Arnold followed Howe's example, setting up his headquarters in the Masters Penn house. During his time in the city, Arnold's lavish lifestyle would mirror the extravagance of the house itself, causing many to raise questions about the source of his wealth amidst reckless spending, which contradicted the salary typical of a recently promoted general. Regardless, by the time of his resignation in March of 1779, Arnold had met and married Peggy Shippen and would begin his treasonous correspondence with the British from behind the very walls that previously housed the enemy and would one day surround the president. Late 1779 would see the retreat of Benedict Arnold from the city, leaving the house in the hands of Robert Morris. An English-born American merchant, Morris was brought to North America by his father when he was just 13 years old. He quickly joined a successful shipping firm based out of Philadelphia, and by 1775, he was the richest man in the colonies. As an early opposer of British tax policies like the Stamp Act, Morris was quick to use his funds to procure arms and ammunition for the fledgling Continental Army, and would later play a key role in providing the supplies necessary to secure victory at the Battle of Yorktown. Following the war, Morris established the Bank of North America, a move that would encourage Washington to offer him the position of Treasury Secretary, but Morris turned it down, suggesting Alexander Hamilton in his place. Morris would, on the other hand, be one of the first to greet Washington after his arrival in Pennsylvania in 1790. That July, Congress had named Philadelphia as the temporary capital of the new United States of America for a period of just 10 years, during which time a new federal district would be constructed along the Potomac. To house the president, the city of Philadelphia rented the Morris House, recently rebuilt after a fire, to an impressive 3 stories. Washington himself, upon inspection of the house, would note that it was perhaps the best single house in the city, and it would be the one that he would call home for the next 7 years. While technically the third home occupied by Washington during his presidency, the first 2 of which were located in New York City, the Morris House quickly underwent a series of drastic changes. Washington's personal secretary, Tobias Lear, worked tirelessly throughout the fall of 1790 to prepare the home for the family's arrival. Per the president's instruction, which was outlined through 9 long letters, Lear attempted to see that each individual detail of the house was completed, from the installation of new windows facing Independence Hall to the curtains that would cover them. However, when Washington arrived, much of the work was still in progress. Preparations for the Capitol were underway across the city, making it difficult to find workers readily available to complete the renovations. Still, even amidst a bustling Philadelphia, Lear arranged for 58 loads of new furniture to arrive at the Morris House, and a wealth of new surrounding structures were added. One of the most drastic changes took place in one of 2 first-floor reception rooms, which was outfitted with curved windows, giving the room a near circular appearance that many historians believe served as the inspiration for the later created ovular Blue Room at the White House, which would then be mirrored for the President's Oval Office at the turn of the 20th century. Washington was set on creating a presidential mansion worthy of hosting foreign dignitaries, while also serving as a model of the strength the new nation boasted. The original master's penthouse provided the strong foundation necessary, with a location in the very heart of the new capital. The restructuring, completed by Morris following the war, erased all evidence of British occupancy or influence, a task that was embellished upon by the work of Washington and Lear. But still, the house left much to be desired. Even in the earliest days of the American experiment, the home served as a reflection of the country still finding its footing. During his time as president, Washington would conduct most of his business from a small second-floor office that required visitors to ascend steep flights, a reality that exacerbated the president. The initial disarray of the house caused a wealth of frustration, but from the mansion within view of Independence Hall, where both the Declaration of Independence and Constitution were signed, Washington would help lay the foundation of America. But the conclusion of his 2 terms also left the country deeply divided. Much like the Washington administration, successor John Adams would oversee significant changes amidst the increasingly partisan government, including the ratification of the 11th Amendment, a movement for the establishment of the Mississippi Territory, and the creation of a new national navy. Unlike his predecessor, however, the Adams occupancy of 6th and Market was a significantly calmer affair. The lavish events held by the previous administration were no longer present, with the most extravagant gathering held in 1799 by Abigail Adams to honor Washington after his death. But the most substantial difference between the 2 households came in the form of 9 additional members. John Adams never owned slaves, but George Washington and First Lady Martha Washington in 1790 brought a company of their slaves from Mount Vernon. The decision to keep enslaved people in Philadelphia clashed with the recently passed 1780 Pennsylvania statute that outlined the gradual abolition of slavery, which Washington incorrectly assumed would not apply to federal officials in the capital. That policy allowed for the freedom of any adult slave with residency in the state for 6 consecutive months, a mandate that was quickly circumvented at the suggestion of Attorney General Edmund Randolph. By periodically sending slaves back to Virginia under false pretenses, like reuniting with family, the clock would reset. Each time a slave left the state, only to return to Philadelphia soon after, another 6 months would need to pass before freedom would be granted, creating a loophole that Washington quickly became fond of using. On the other hand, in a city filled with free blacks and with a thriving abolitionist community, Washington did allow those in his household significant freedoms, making them not just an integral part of the president's house, but also the city of Philadelphia as a whole. Amongst the 9 slaves brought by Washington to staff the presidential household, Moll, the nursemaid to Martha's 2 grandchildren, Ona Judge, Martha's personal maid, and chief cook Hercules. The young son of Hercules, Richmond, would also reside briefly at the Philadelphia residence, working as a scullion in the kitchen for a year before returning to Mount Vernon. The most significant information maintained by any of the Washington slaves comes from Ona Judge, who was brought to the city at the age of 17 to continue her position as personal maid to Martha Washington. As a minor, she was initially exempt from the Pennsylvania statute, but she would eventually escape and find freedom in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Through 2 interviews given to abolitionist newspapers in the 1840s, Ona Judge would detail her life, including her experiences with the Washingtons and their attempts to recapture her, all of which were unsuccessful. Substantial history on Hercules, Washington's head chef, also suggests that the slaves of the presidential mansion were given a kind of freedom not typically offered to enslaved people of the time. Often known as Uncle Harkless, Hercules was given clearance by Washington to sell the leftovers from state banquets for his own personal income. Through those means, Hercules improved his wardrobe and was well known for enjoying an evening promenade through the city. Like Ona Judge, though, he would ultimately secure his freedom by escaping from Mount Vernon in 1797, after which he remained a fugitive slave until his official freedom was granted under the terms of Washington's will. But as the country continued to grow, the presence of enslaved people in the president's house in Philadelphia was nearly forgotten in time. Following Adams' departure to the White House in 1800, the house would transform again, first into a hotel and eventually into a row of commercial buildings that would later be demolished in 1935. The entire block was razed in 1951 in preparation for Independence Mall, and all above-ground components were lost to the construction. Below the surface, however, lingering signs of those who once lived and worked within the walls of the mansion remained. An excavation, started in 2007, uncovered significant evidence of the enslaved people who ran the Washington household, including bits of broken bottles, ceramic dishes, and a deep well that would have regularly been used by those who lived there. Modern visitors to Independence Mall can view portions of the original stone foundation, including the bowed window installed by Washington, the kitchen and wash house, and an underground passageway that connected the kitchen to the main house. The discoveries prompted the creation of a memorial, highlighting a drastically different view of the beginnings of America than the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall not far away. Just as the house that once took up residence on the corner was built over time, the country it served was formed brick by brick. Each addition and modification brought about significant change to the livelihood of those inhabiting it. But for many, the freedoms provided to former colonists after the conclusion of the American Revolution did not apply. The enslaved people who worked in the Washington household are but a small example of the freedoms withheld from a significant part of the population, with much of the evidence of their presence nearly buried for eternity. It's only thanks to the work of the voices of many, historians, archaeologists, and community members alike, that their stories are now told alongside those of the Founding Fathers. Combined, they represent the enduring legacy of America and showcase the never-ending spirit of freedom that lives on today. The remains of the President's House can still be found at the corner of 6th and Market Street, situated between the Independence Visitor Center and the Liberty Bell Center. Independence National Historical Park protects a wealth of early American history, including Congress Hall, the first and second banks of the United States, the Free Quaker Meeting House, the Declaration House, and of course, Independence Hall. Much of the park is open daily with regularly scheduled tours provided and plenty to explore, but the President's House site itself is open daily from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for visitors to view at their own pace. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. If you got something out of this episode, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.